There are a lot of things that I really like about modern life simulators, but I don't love them. Not in the way that I wish I could, the way that I used to. After spending a decade with Sims 4 and now Inzoi, I've realised that they share the same fundamental problem, one that's quietly holding the entire genre back. Hello lovelies, it's Sophie here. Today I really want to talk about what modern life sims are missing, why it matters more than people realise, and why no amount of new features can fix it. Grab a snack, get comfy, this one's a little bit of a deep dive. First, I just want to take a quick second to remind ourselves of what a life simulation actually is. To set the scene, according to Wikipedia, life simulation games are about maintaining and growing a virtual life, where players are given the power to control the lives of autonomous people or creatures. They are a subgenre of simulation video games in which the player lives or controls one or more virtual characters, human or otherwise, and such a game can revolve around individuals and relationships, or it could be a simulation of an ecosystem. Life simulation is a huge genre, and that definition can encompass a lot of different games, but today I'm going to be talking about a really specific corner of it. I mean the everyday, crazy life, build a neighbourhood and watch families grow up type of life sim. Games like Inzoi, The Sims, Paralives, and the now cancelled Life by You. They're not strategy or purpose-built city builders, farming sims, or business management games. They're games where the whole fantasy is literally just building a world and watching stories unfold with the characters that are in it. So a virtual town. So that's the niche that I'll be talking about today, and that niche has a very specific problem. When I think about a life simulation game like those that I mentioned, to me that means having the option to decide how much control I want over my characters and their lives. In these games, we've always been able to, and now we have an increased ability, to do the following things. Decide how much autonomy they have, their age, their appearance, aspirations, their family members, friends, pets, what town they live in, what part of that town they live in or move to, what job they have, do they like going on holidays? Maybe I want a household of single college students, a suburban family, a filthy rich family with dirty secrets, or even a vampire cult. You can create any story you want within that town or world, but I think the important part is the fact that it's optional. I can decide if I want to control those things or if they're decided for me. But not only that, I can also choose the degree to which those things are chosen for me. What households do I want to age without me deciding? Do I even want any to, or do I want them just to remain static, young forever? Do I want households to adopt pets, make decisions on marriage and kids, move out of town? Ultimately, the key is that all of that choice is ours. The game awards us that freedom, but at the same time, if we don't want that control and we don't want to bother with the tediousness of that, we don't have to. A lot of us play very differently, and that is part of why I think the community is so rich and full of incredibly talented and creative individuals. We all exist in a sort of echo chamber of cool building ideas, immersive, unique worlds, and pretty CC outfits. All of these things the game studios support. We now even have in-game modding support in Inzoi, and Paralives itself will be extremely customizable. I've probably spent the same amount of time trawling through Tumblr and Mod The Sims as I have actually playing the damn game. I've discovered entirely new ways to play that I wouldn't have ever thought of doing before, which just extended my playtime more than it ever was. The community can be extremely toxic at times, yeah, but nonetheless I think it's been the heart of these games since the very beginning. So before I get onto what I think is the massive problem that is holding this entire genre back, I do want to talk about what life simulation games do well. In a lot of ways, modern life simulation games like Inzoi and The Sims offer great customization in that sense. There are so many systems with varying degrees of depth and functionality that provide players with a lot of value, and these have only grown and developed deeper over time. We can look at Create a Sim, Create a Zoi, or Paramaker for example, where we first start in the game. We started out with two-dimensional characters in Sims 1 where we were only able to pick between a few different bodies and head choices. This then developed into the face sliders we know in Sims 2, but we were limited to 2 body options. Then in Sims 3 we got 4 body sliders, which evolved into what we have in Sims 4 today, the drag and pull system for every major body part. And this was developed even further in Inzoi, which brought back the colour wheel and includes a similar pull system as Sims 4. It's also got the studio for taking pictures of your Zoya with various backdrops, Zoids do look extremely lifelike and detailed, and we are afforded great variability in their appearance. It's really convenient and easy to create a diverse bunch of Zoids. A lot of people don't like how realistic and almost plasticky they look, stating that it doesn't have a personality or unique style like The Sims and Paralives does. Regardless, the technology has clearly evolved in leaps and bounds over the years in terms of the characters that we can create, with every game having been clearly influenced by the last. The same goes for other aspects in the genre. One other example that comes to mind is personality. It's interesting to me how this has also changed over time. Inzoi's personality system has moved away from one-dimensional traits like we saw in Sims 3 and 4 and has a more diverse personality function. Zoids are defined by their traits and most recently the added characteristics, which seem to have a lot of influence on the Zoids wants. If you didn't know, these are optional mini goals to give direction as to what your character wants to do. I do want to say, as another side note, I do think Paralives will do personalities best. They've got a mixture of one-dimensional stats that exist on a spectrum as well as lifestyles, vibes and talents to form a more well-rounded, multifaceted character. I did make a video that goes into more detail on that, so if you're interested, please go check that out. As I mentioned, the features and the depth of them is debatable, but there are a lot of really cool ideas that have kind of been built on thanks to the community's feedback. Inzoi and Paralives teams are in particular very receptive to feedback. Asian, the lead Inzoi dev, is always in the Inzoi Discord taking on feedback, looking for ways to improve the game. There's always new updates and the game's starting to pick up players again, which I'm really happy to see. Paralives are very much the same since the first days of development. They've always been very open to feedback and wanting to see what we want in the game. I think that's why Paralives is already very successful. It was built with that choice in mind from the very beginning. But really the point is, every iteration of life simulators are generally an improvement in some way. This is only natural, of course, with the continual improvement of technology, global reach like we've never had before thanks to the internet, and growing popularity of the genre. To give some perspective, The Sims 4 has been played by over 85 million people worldwide across all platforms. That's according to EA's own report, and I'd imagine that number will just continue to grow, at least only if some major changes are made. We're now entering a whole brand new era of these niche life sims where Sims isn't the only option anymore, which is why I feel it's important to say what I'm about to say. All of these games have valid criticisms, but they all share one major problem. Why can't I create or edit the world? We seem to have an entire library of systems and customizability, but these still don't really allow us complete creative freedom. Create a world/world edit tools can be interpreted differently, so Wikipedia Sophie is here again to pull out a definition. So it's essentially like a tool or a system that allows players to create a whole new world or neighbourhood for their save. This includes editing terrain, adding or removing lots, and just generally shaping how the world functions. It effectively lets players act as the world builder, not just a house builder. Sometimes this can be a new save, but powerful tools allow for creation of multiple worlds in the same save. I think Sims 2 does this the best. We can create an infinite, or as many as your PC can take before imploding, amount of neighbourhoods or worlds, however you want to call them, in one save, and you can visit and travel between them seamlessly. You can have one main hood, which is the first one, and then create connecting add-on neighbourhoods. Famously, Uberhood style playthroughs have always been insanely popular ways to play. You combine several neighbourhoods together and play them rotational style. The stories and generational lore is so rich, as the physical town literally grows with The Sims. Sims 3 works a little bit differently. We've got an external tool for creating worlds, but there isn't an easy way to connect multiple worlds or neighbourhoods together. If you want to visit another world, you have to use a mod to select it as a vacation world, and you have to stay at a base camp for a minimum amount of time. You can't just pop there for a shopping trip like in Sims 2. The game doesn't treat them as adjacent neighbourhoods, which is unfortunate, but at least we have the option to create our own worlds how we like. So if we do want more space, we can just create a large world with loads of lots if we want to. Granted, the Create a World tool is quite fiddly and in my opinion not the most user friendly. I didn't really even manage to use it myself just because I did find it so difficult, but at least it works and we have the option. And for those that are talented, we can download their creations if they want to share them. And in terms of Sims 4, we can visit other neighbourhoods but we can't create them, which is the issue. We're limited to the same pre-packaged worlds that come with the game. We can't edit lots, we can't move them or resize them. We can't edit anything about the world at all. We can only demolish or build on the existing lots within set locations in the pre-made worlds. I'm honestly quite hesitant to call them worlds because they feel much more like little segmented film sets. There is a mod called the Blowtorch mod, which I've used in an attempt to turn the pre-made worlds into empty shells that I can decorate. It essentially removes all the set dressing and leaves the world empty. It is pretty amazing, but due to the limitations of the game code, we still can't really do what we want to do, which is create your own world and add or move lots. Then we've got Inzoi. Crafton describes it as providing a comprehensive community simulation where the entire city is constantly being simulated all at once. While this is theoretically true at a technical level, yes, the world is rendered and NPCs exist, a world can't feel like a real life simulation if the player can't shape or meaningfully interact with it. Inzoi looks like one of those games where you can build out a whole city exactly how you want. When a lot of us first saw the street views, the buildings, the whole sort of aesthetic of Inzoi, I know we were thinking like, wow, this looks incredible. We can literally customize everything. That's what I was thinking when I first saw those videos, but it turns out we can't move lots, we can't create new lots, we can't design the world, and you can only really edit tiny strips of pavement or sidewalk or some of the objects that are in the streets. I've tried desperately to make it my own, but I just couldn't. I was resigned to the fact that all of my Zoys would be playing in the same never-changing cities like some kind of parallel universe. The cars on the side of the pavement aren't real, and a lot of the buildings are empty husks. The world constantly being simulated implies that everything is functional, but much of Inzoi's worlds aren't. We have restaurants you can walk in, stores with decor but no gameplay, areas that look interactive but they just aren't. It creates the appearance of a living city, but not the behaviour of one. It breaks the simulation and just reminds me that I am playing a simulation, if that makes sense. In some ways, I'd actually argue that that's worse than Sims 4 because at least in Sims 4, much of the set dressing is in out-of-bound areas, so we know that we can't interact with them, and they aren't always fully rendered or don't have complete textures. But the point remains, a world being visible is not the same as being alive, and while some set dressing is necessary, it's gotten to the point that the world is more decorative than functional. I'm going to bring up a weird little metaphor that I thought of. I think it explains this thought process quite well. I like to think of it as the triangle of fire model, which is basically showing the three essential elements that you need for a fire, which is fuel, heat and oxygen. The key point is that without one of those things, a fire can't burn. So basically the life simulator is the build mode, character creator and life simulation all in one. You need all of those three things to create a life sim basically. I kind of got that idea from Alex Mass in his delay statement where he said that life sims are 3 games in one. Essentially, if one of those things is weak, the whole thing collapses, so you could have a build mode without a character creator, but then it wouldn't be a life simulation. It would just be like a house building game. However, there is something more important, the environment that those 3 things exist in. Where are we putting the fire? That's incredibly important, right? The neighbourhood, the world, is essentially the container the triangle sits in, and if the container is wrong, the triangle doesn't function properly, even if all 3 of those sides are strong. We don't want to be lighting a bonfire on the bedroom carpet, for example. So I hope that weird metaphor kind of makes sense, but what I'm trying to say is that the world, the map, the neighbourhood is the stage, the environment in this example. The Sims also touts the same rhetoric like live the life you want, live how you want, but I'd argue that the lack of world editing severely limits that player creativity. Limiting the world to fixed decorative spaces creates the opposite. There's no agency over the world, no long-term world progression, no consequences of your actions. This is a problem for life sims in general, and I don't understand why game devs neglect this so much. It seems to have been totally forgotten about, and it is worrying me that this will be a pattern going forwards in the new era of life sims. They give us these complex systems for story progression, population growth, business management, and those things are genuinely awesome and really fun, but to me it feels pointless if the world around it is just the same and not changing. They're doing it backwards in my opinion. They should start with the create a world/world tools first, or at least ensure that the game's foundations incorporate this and then implement other more complex systems. Because life sims aren't just about people, they're about places. You can't simulate complex lives in simple environments. If the player can't change the world, then the world never reacts to the player. When I'm walking around Kahaya or Oasis Springs looking at those fake buildings and cars that I know don't belong to anyone, it's all I can think about. I feel like I'm in the Truman Show, honestly. It just feels empty and quite eerie. And yes, I do sometimes get a similar feeling in The Sims 2 when I'm in Strange Town or another generally empty neighbourhood and the road stretches out into what appears to be an empty wasteland if you don't have other lots around. But I at least know that that road is going somewhere, to Londos down the road, or maybe the Tricues are walking down to their house of fallen trees. And if I want to put something there, I can. If it's too empty, I can build whatever I want there. But it's not the same. In Inzoi and Sims 4 I can't do that. The set dressing is there because it fills gaps just to give the illusion of purpose, but I know it does nothing. It contributes nothing. It just feels completely pointless to me. And pretty maps are not gameplay. Why would I want to own multiple shops if the shopping district never changes or expands? Why would I want dynamic storytelling if every story happens in the same static world design? Why would I want a robust building system if I can't place houses anywhere except pre-made slots? Why would I want loan systems, business stats, or population charts if the physical town never reflects those changes? Why would I bother with unique characters if they all exist in an unchanging environment? I mentioned earlier that The Sims was created as a dollhouse simulator, but we evolved from that into the world outside of just that dollhouse. Even in Sims 1, I'm not the only person who feels like this. One of the most searched items in Google for Sims 4 is create a world. So it just kind of shows that that is an expectation now. That was one of the main criticisms of the game when it first came out. Where is the create a world tool? People have tried to create mods to allow us to do these things, but it's extremely complex because the current game engine doesn't allow for such a thing, so modders kind of have to circumvent and go a different route. But the fact that people are trying so hard and putting in so much effort to make these things give us the freedom that we always craved just proves how important this is in the game for many of us. With my very limited knowledge of creating a game, I would imagine it would be easier to do if we had an open world as the way I see it. The Sims 4 worlds are closed off and segmented, which makes it a bit more complex than if it was just one large open space. I'd imagine that you have to store all the data for multiple different mini worlds in a way, whereas if it was one large open world it would all be in one place. I don't know if that even makes much sense. I did have some actual game devs in my comments in a previous video which was really cool, so if you're here again, please let me know if I'm wrong. The thing is, if Paralives and Indie Studio can plan to do these things, why can't The Sims? Why can't Inzoi? The Sims already did it over 20 years ago even, and arguably to a very good standard for the time. I specifically mentioned earlier how big this genre is, how much money is actually generated every year, and how many people play these games. So why is it so difficult to give us these tools? Is it because the companies underestimate the importance of them, or they just don't want to invest the money and effort into creating and maintaining these systems? But again, can it really be that difficult for a massive company like EA? Maybe it's all of the above, I don't know. I have seen a counter argument over the years that Sims 4 is the way that it is, because the player base don't have powerful enough systems to run a more demanding game. First of all, I don't really even think that's true. I've seen countless TikToks and memes, and I personally know many people who have built powerful PCs just to play The Sims. That's literally why I built my first computer, just so I could play Sims 3 on a bigger screen with all of its expansions. But even back then when I was playing Sims 3, my 2012 Asus laptop played it just fine, and even so the lag wasn't really enough to put off that many people. It was widely accepted as just a feature at that point. I'm not by any means saying that's a good thing, I'm just saying that hardware limitations have never really been that deciding factor for whether people stick with these games or not. Players have always been willing to put up with jank, lag, long load times, and just generally the weird glitches of the game. If the depth and the freedom on the other side feels worth it, live sim players don't leave because a game's demanding, they leave when it feels shallow, or when the game has just been stripped back. And when you're talking about a genre where people happily invest hundreds or even thousands of hours into a single save, that depth matters far more than perfect performance. Performance issues didn't kill player investment, losing depth did. So if that's what EA are worried about, I think they're just barking up the complete wrong tree. Additionally, to be so real, I am just going to say it, I don't think it's fair to cut out good features from a game just because you're worried it will hurt some parts of the player base. Purely just from a selfish standpoint, why do players who are able to run those games need to miss out because some people can't run the game? You really don't see this in any other big name titles, so I'm starting to feel like it's just an excuse for EA to not put in the effort. There's also the fact that Sims 4 is extremely buggy, built on poor foundations and poorly optimised. EA are piling the content onto a 10-year-old game that was never built for purpose in the first place. I'm sure many of you at this point have heard the Project Olympus theories that Sims 4 was originally built as an online multiplayer game, which was scrapped at the last minute because EA didn't want to risk another failure after SimCity. me. Crafting, however, is a different story. They have put an open world, at least in Inzoi. The game itself is very graphically demanding, the character models are highly realistic, almost having this hyper polished aesthetic. I'd argue that that's more complex and resource demanding than world editing tools, so why don't they have it? I want to make it clear that the purpose of this video is not to bash either game. I'm trying to understand why world edit tools are so looked over and just not implemented at all. I think both games have great features, especially Inzoi, but they are missing such a glaring feature. With all of that being said, what do I actually want from a life sim in terms of world edit tools? For me, the perfect mix would be Sims 2's in-game create a neighbourhood / world tools, Sims 3's open world, and Sims 4's seamless travel between worlds. That would be the perfect game for me. We've already seen all of these systems exist in some form, which is why it's so frustrating that we've never had them fully combined. The Sims 2 and 3 felt so alive to me, and that was purely down to the freedom that they gave us. We had the ability to create themed worlds, download endless community-made neighbourhoods, and shape everything around our own ideas. In The Sims 2, I even had my Sims go on vacation to the moon. And yeah, this might sound dramatic, but give me that level of creative freedom and I generally wouldn't need another life sim, or another game for that matter. The magic of building an entire world exactly how I want it and then creating characters to match, with their own stories and lore, is just completely like nothing else. This is a large part of why I so heavily support Paralives and why I really believe in what they're putting out. They're planning full world edit tools including free lot placement and resizing with little restriction on the shape and location. We can put lots right next to each other to create rows of seamless townhouses, or we can have an empty lot in the middle of nowhere to create a farm. We're also going to get a create a world tool, so we'll finally be able to create whatever we want. I'm hoping that we do also get seamless travel between worlds when we can create multiple, or there'll be some kind of system to connect multiple worlds together, like in The Sims 2 and Sims 4. It will just add so much value to the game in my opinion, for what would be one system. I hope that Paralive sets a new precedent for what is expected for life simulation games. I know that is a huge amount of pressure on them, but I feel like they're the only ones who can just save the genre right now. So those are my honest thoughts on life simulations right now. Life sims in my eyes kind of fail to do what they set out to, when they give us these complex systems but place them inside static decorative worlds. I'm really not hating on the devs. They've truly built something beautiful, especially Inzoi, but beauty and cool systems aren't enough for me personally for a life simulation game. I am desperate for the genre to succeed, and I will happily make a I was wrong about this game video if they get it right. I just want to put my all into trying to help this genre succeed because I truly believe in it, and I know so many others are as well. Sims brought me so much joy and I just want to experience that, and it's not just nostalgia speaking. These are just my own opinions and I'm not trying to tell anyone what to think. I do feel quite strongly about this and wanted to talk about it. What do you think? Do you feel the same way or are you hyped regardless? Let me know in the comments. I do really love hearing your opinions. If you did enjoy the video, please don't forget to subscribe or leave a comment or like if you want to. I do make weekly videos on life sim games like Paralives, Inzoi and The Sims. Thank you so much for watching. I do really appreciate the time that anybody takes out of their day to watch my rambling and my waffling on. I really do appreciate it. So again, thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you in the next one.